Coming down. We are live. All righty. 3, 2, and 1. Welcome in to the post-game edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. True disbelief is really the only way I could phrase right now the mindset, George, going into this podcast. The Colts win in overtime 31-28 in maybe the most improbable win they will get this season. I mean, just overall, George, again, a great win. Gardner Minshew leads them with his right arm, makes a few throws that honestly I did not think he was capable of making. A lot of negatives, a lot of sloppiness. But still, with that said, this is truly, George, a great win for this team.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I give him enough flack on this podcast, so I want to start off and say it was Minshew's best game of the year. He really, there were things that did not go well, but he made some throws that we've been waiting for him to make for a long time, specifically 3 of them to Alec Pierce. But also, I think from a complimentary football standpoint, it was their best game of the year. It wasn't their best game of the year from an execution standpoint. It wasn't their best game of the year from ball security. It wasn't their best game of the year in a lot of ways, but they got huge contributions from all 3 phases when they needed them. And I think that we haven't seen that yet this year. But I think it's also, to sum it up, I think it's the most Colts win of the year. It's the most Shane Steichen win of the year. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and they still found a way to win it there in the end.
I think the second part of that phrase, George, was spot on. This was a Shane Steichen win because, right, the normal Colts, as we've known them and watched them the last few years, they don't win this game. So many things. How we talked about this game, George, going in, and the preview pod we did, and talking about the run game, talking about how they got to win the ball, not turn it over, execute in the red zone. Everything we said they needed to do in order to win this game, the opposite happened. The total opposite happened. They were even on the turnover battle, but 2 costly ones. They were awful in the red zone until it mattered the most. Derrick Henry ran wild, looked like the Derrick Henry of 2019 now. All of a sudden, 100 yards before he got hurt, 2 touchdowns. The best player on defense went out for the Titans. Best player on offense went out for the Titans. And it still looked to be like they're going to lose this game. They're going to lose this game to this damn Titans team. It is relief. It's true. Let's go, George. That is a true Shane Steichen win because the thing under him is they don't quit. They keep on going. They overcome adversity at every single spot. That was all Steichen today.
No, absolutely. And just the belief that he's instilled in this team. But I got to give you a lot of credit, too, because you said as soon as they won the coin toss, this is going to work in their favor. They know what they need, and it turned out that way. And so, biggest drive by the offense of the year. I don't think there's any question about that. Coming down there, needing a touchdown, going and getting the touchdown with only 4 minutes, too. I mean, which for a lot of teams, that's a lot of time. But the way the Colts were driving today, those scoring drives were either extremely short, like in terms of the distance they had to go, or they were long 10-minute drives. So, there wasn't a whole lot of reason to believe when they got that ball. I certainly didn't think they were going to put the ball in the end zone. But they did. Even when they're at the 4-yard line, you're thinking they're 0 for 4 down here. The Titans might have them where they need them, and it sounded like Michael Pittman talking in the locker room just a few moments ago. It wasn't a broken play, but you got to improvise, down there in the red zone. So he just sort of saw the defense pass off a couple guys and ran right to the back of the end zone, thinking, okay, no one's deep basically here. And Minshew saw him and hit him, and the rest is quite literally history.
It literally is. Let's start there, George. What was the mood in the locker room? What was the mood post-game? Because, again, so many things went wrong for this team. There's so many spots, me and you texting throughout the game, like, they're not winning. They're not. I thought I was dead set there. This game was going to end 25-25 in a tie. I did not think any team or either team was going to score another point the rest of the game. Post-game locker room, George, set the team.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much what you probably expect. They were booing us when we came in and said, turn the music down. But it was absolutely giddy, out of level I haven't seen yet this year. Now, this is the first road game I've had. So, some of the road games earlier, I wasn't in Baltimore. I wasn't in Germany. I don't know what the reactions were in some of these other games. But this is the happiest locker room I've seen. And it's the time of year where, you need to win. And you have to win games like this. I talked to DeForest Buckner just a couple minutes ago, Obviously, he's a veteran of postseason games. He was on that 2020 playoff team here. He was with the Super Bowl with 49ers. And I said, is this the kind of game that at the end of the year, when you have these playoff years, you go back and you circle wins like this? And he just sort of laughed. And he's like, absolutely. This is, the games that playoff teams find a way to win. Bad teams find a way to lose these games. Playoff teams find a way to win these games. And I think that's, the Colts understand that. Division games are always tough. Games down here are not just always tough. They're always weird. I mean, there's always, the sideline didn't catch on fire this year, but there's always something that is just, you've never seen it before. A missed face mask, and then the next play, there's a fumble, and it's a run back for a touchdown. It's just always weird. This time, 2 blocked punts, a returned extra point, a returned 2-point conversion, a missed extra point to take the lead, late in the game. It was just insane. Easily the drunkest game since Cleveland. And look, the Titans fans are very upset with the refs. I think they feel much like the Colts did after the Cleveland game. But you've got to find ways to win games like this. And I think if the Colts are playing in the second week of January, you're going to look back on this one as a big reason why.
Absolutely. There was so much that went against them here. To find a way to win is truly incredible, because they also found ways to win and found plenty of ways, George, to give this game away and to lose it. I think we can't go any further. I talk about the star of the game, both on a positive and a negative, in Gardner Minshew, where the thing, too, that's encouraging about this team, George, is that they have found different ways to win all season long. Going back to Baltimore, Matt Gay drills 4 50-yard field goals, something we've never seen a kicker do in the history of kicking the ball. So they've won games with special teams. They've won games with defense, where we've seen them get 2 pick sixes in order to put the Panthers away, or to shut down the Patriots in Germany. We've seen them get a strip sack last week against Baker Mayfield. We've seen the run game with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss each have big days and impact this game. And this was the first game, George, we saw Gardner Minshew literally win the game with his arm. It started, and fittingly too, by the way, it started and ended the same way. Deep shot to Alec Pierce. That's been a name we've talked about all season long, confused as to why he's not involved more. Any chance he's gotten, he's produced and played well. The only issue is not getting the ball enough. And we saw today 2 deep shots from Gardner Minshew. One, the touchdown to Alec Pierce on the first drive, and then the last drive in overtime gets him down to the 4-yard line. Good things happen, George, when you let Alec Pierce, we'll say, gallop, and when you let Gardner Minshew cook and throw the ball deep. He had some bad misses, but he made 2 huge throws that really changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, he had his moments today where you're wondering what's going on. There were a couple times where he threw the ball late, where he didn't throw the ball at all. One of the red zone drives, right before they got in the red zone, he had a chance to throw the ball up for Pierce in the end zone and didn't do it. But he delivered when he had to. And I think overall it was his best game of the year. I mean, he had, I haven't looked at the yards per attempt today, but it was up around 8 most of the game. So it's by far one of his better days in that regard. And he was more efficient than he has been at times this year. But I think the biggest thing, and we talked about right here at the top, he was taking those deep shots. He wasn't afraid to pull the trigger, getting Alec Pierce involved. That's huge. And I think it's something that really paid off, obviously, for this team. It sets up the game-winning touchdown. There's no question about that. I think Michael Pittman called it the biggest play of the year so far, and probably right on that. It's hard to really think of one that's more important because you're not coming out of here with a win if they don't get that deep ball to Alec Pierce there late. 3 catches for 100 yards. Pitt thinks it's Pierce's first 100-yard game of his career. We'll have to look that up. We can't just take his word for it. But he hasn't had many. And to do it in this environment, in this moment, we talked all week. Tennessee's a much different team at home. And you saw it on the field today. They are a much different team at home. This is their first loss this year at Nissan Stadium. For the Colts to come in here and come out with a win, and who knows what's going to happen. As we speak, Pittsburgh's behind in a game that might be delayed for the 33rd time. Cleveland's losing early against the Rams. Who knows how this is going to shake out at the end of the day. But we know this much. They're still going to hold down a playoff spot when everything's said and done today.
And that's why this game is so massive, and it's why it was just so frustrating at times because, like you said, you see the Broncos, who are now hot of the Colts' tail, winners of 5 in a row, lose to the Texans. You had that game is final. Pittsburgh has lost today, so now they are 7-5. The Browns right now are currently trailing, so if they lose, they're 7-5. So it's like you had a massive opportunity here if you're the Colts to really cement your spot. and get closer and closer to putting yourself in a great position to grab one of the 3 playoff spots that are all wide open right now. And that's why against a 4-7 team, the Titans, again, division rival, obviously tough game, like we said. We talked about the challenges of how different they are at home versus on the road. And that's what made some of these miscues by the Colts, as simple as whether it was the 2-point conversion went the other way, whether it was some of the play calling that Shane Steichen had near the goal line that for me was infuriating. The second one, really the one after the second block punt by Tony Brown, where on 3rd down, instead of running the ball, I thought she just ran the ball 2 more times from the 2-yard line. Tries to get cute. Gardner Minshew sacked. That now all of a sudden takes you out of any chance of going for it on 4th down. You kick a field goal instead of going up by 10. Now you're only up by 6. And what happens immediately? Tennessee drives right down the field. The Colts got lucky. But also, George, they made their own luck. And that's, I think, a huge difference with this team this year and a huge difference in Shane Steichen coming in. They absolutely got lucky where Ryan Stonehouse gets hurt, which impacted the hold on the missed extra point. And maybe we're not even in overtime because if it hits the extra point, Titans win the game and it's over. Gardner Minshew strip sack in the red zone. Like the Colts did had plenty of reasons to lose. They also were given plenty of reasons by the Titans to win. But good teams, George, create their own luck. And I think that's been one of the hallmark traits of this Colts team this year. I think it starts with the new head coach, Shane Steichen. He has come in and has really brought, whether it's grit, whether it's attention to detail, like a lot of the small details that the Colts are focused on are turning up massively here and helping them get, wins in a league that is the margin for errors, as we've seen today, razor thin.
It felt like one of those games for most of the time that you were going to be talking about missed opportunities. Not getting it done in the red zone, getting the sack there on that 3rd down. There were just so many moments, fumbling back the fumble early in the game.
Thank you. I was going to say, I knew I was forgetting one.
There were so many moments there. And it was such an interesting game because, as we said here at the top, all 3 phases contributed when they had to. All 3 phases made plays in the clutch to win this game. The block punts, the defense in the second half, the offense coming through on that final drive. But all 3 phases and the coach also had moments, that cost the team today. And they were able to overcome that. And I think that's the most important thing. They've been talking all year long. You got to play at your best in November and December. I mean, we've been talking about it since Thanksgiving. This is sort of the March Madness time of year in the NFL. Survive in advance. You get in here and you got to try to find a way to win. And you want to play your best. That's obviously what everybody's goal is. But you have to be able to, on days like this, when you don't have your fastball and you're not able to get everything click, you've got to still find a way to dig to the bottom of the barrel and win the game. And this team did it. You can talk about Tennessee and the problems they're having. You can talk about, the issues the Colts had throughout this game. Bottom line, they're on a 4-game winning streak for the first time since 2018, which is insane. And they've got Grover Stewart coming back next week. And as Nero De Niro says in the comments, they just swept the Titans. So that hasn't happened since 2018. I do think it's kind of interesting. First win here since 2020. First time they swept the Titans since 2018. What do those 2 years have in common? Playoff berths.
Playoffs, baby. Playoffs. Come on, George. It feels great to sweep the Titans. And again, this is a win that is much needed, but it's also, too, again, it shows the clutch factor, the resiliency, because again, we just talked about before the result, the Steelers losing on the Cardinals. Cardinals stink. Now they have Kyler Murray, so a little bit different team, but you're the Steelers at home. I know Kenny Pickett got hurt and left that game, and Mitch Trubisky played a good amount of it. But again, and the Colts played their own backup quarterback, right? For most of this season, they have found different ways to win, and they are clutch. Is it always pretty? No. But especially offensively, George, I think we could definitely say that when the Colts need it, they play their best or do enough, we'll say, to get the job done. And you saw it again last week that after the Buccaneers scored a touchdown and get it to 20-17, what do the Colts do immediately? Go right down the field, score a touchdown. Today, that offense, me and you were texting George throughout the entire game. We both thought at one point in the fourth quarter, like, well, at least the Colts are not scoring again in this game. And the question was, is the Titans going to win it, or was this going to be a 25-25 tie? And it just felt so bogged down, really, after that first drive of the second half where they marched right down the field, took up almost 10 minutes of the clock. settled for a field goal. They didn't really get anything going after that. And it's just like, holy cow, like they're going to end up blowing this game because offensively they can't put 2 first downs together. And you get to overtime when you need it, despite the fact that they've given you no reason to believe they can do it. Gardner Minshew makes a few throws, uncorks the deep ball this time. Again, for all the misses he had, and he had a few misses deep, by the way. Thankfully, it looks like they're finally starting to get Pierce more involved in the deep passing game. Only took long enough. But he missed a few times where Pierce was open and Pittman was open. He missed some open throws deep, but to hit it there, clutch, get down to the 4-yard line. And I'll be honest, too, after the first down, miscommunication looked like where I don't know whose fault it was on the double slant where no one's really looking. There's a lot of physicality there. Probably should have been a flag, but no flag thrown. And you see the Titans load up the box. I'll be honest, George, I'm like, oh boy, like are they playing for the field goal here? You know, I mean, Shane gave you no reason to believe in his play calling that he truly trusted Gardner, but a great, whether it's impromptu, however Michael Pittman wants to phrase it, a great route where you shake him at the top, go open right in the middle, nice throw by Gardner Minshew. They find ways, again, not pretty sometimes, but especially offensively, when they need a drive, when they need to make a play here, they have found ways in recent weeks to do it. And that, again, is just, I think, the mark of a clutch team, which you, like I said, you need now. This is not college football. We just saw with Florida State. You don't need style points, right? You don't have to beat the Titans by 35 to impress the committee. There's no committee here to impress. The only way you get in is by having enough wins in the W column. No pictures in the scorecard. W the books, George. It counts all the same.
Yep, not Georgia either. You're not going to win the entire season and lose your last game and be out. You know, this is all about getting it done on the field, and it's what the Colts are doing right now. I was just looking up win streaks in the NFL. Philadelphia, who, you know, we'll see how the game comes out with San Francisco right now, on a 5-game winning streak, the only team right now hotter than the Colts in the NFL. The Cowboys also on a 4-game winning streak. The Colts are now their first 4-game winning streak since 2018. You can't ask for more. You can argue about the level of competition. You can argue about whatever you want to argue about. You got to be a good team in the NFL to win 4 straight against anyone. You've seen it week in and week out. I mean, you just mentioned it. Pittsburgh loses today to Arizona. You're not going to call that coming in. Now, they lost their quarterback during the game, but the Colts have played without their starter for, 7 weeks now? So, you know, it's you've got to find a way. And I think that's the one thing more than anything else Shane Steichen has brought to this franchise is that mentality of it doesn't matter what's going on. Jonathan Taylor's out. Anthony Richardson's out. Grover Stewart's out. You're on the road. The team's never lost at home. None of that matters. Go out and execute and win the game. And the players have bought in. And, you know, more often than not, 7 out of 12, that's exactly what they've done.
Absolutely right. Again, just like we thought coming into the year that they'd be 7-5 right now, holding firm on that 7th and final wild card spot as we speak here. But also, too, George, it's like you look how this game unfolded. We talked about coming in, and one of the keys we did mention in the preview pod was, all right, no Jonathan Taylor coming into this game. This felt like a game like we saw last week against Tampa Bay. If you're the Colts, maybe throwing the ball early to open up the run game is the way to kind of get some balance on offense. And we saw the Colts coming out throwing. The only difference compared to last week is Colts established no run game whatsoever. 55 yards on the ground, second lowest total of the season, lowest since the Week 6 Jaguars game. That was just an absolute blowout from the start. And it's like, so you have no run game to rely on. Zach Moss, for the most part, is ineffective. That even when Jeffrey Simmons goes out, that Tennessee defensive line is still pushing the Colts offensive line around. This was one of their worst games of the season. But again, just makes this win that much sweeter when you could truly rely on Gardner Minshew to come through and make some big-time throws when you need it. By the way, go back to something really fast here. Did double check. That is Alec Pierce's first 100-yard game of his career. Michael Pittman Jr. not only is doing a great job catching the ball, also doing a great job keeping the stats in his head as well. But that's also, I think, a guy we got to give a lot of praise to, George, Michael Pittman Jr., because he has been, right, Gardner's now security blanket without a doubt this season, but especially in these last few weeks. And he's doing, I think, a great job of separating, giving Gardner a good target to throw the ball to, and especially on third downs, coming up with some big-time conversions where he's been moving the chains a lot by himself. He is really earning his money here, George. You're going to get a nice payday at the end of the year.
Yeah, and he had back-to-back 100-yard games, made the game-winning touchdown catch, and all he wanted to talk about in the locker room was Alec Pierce and what a big day he had, the big plays that he made. And I think that just goes to show you, you know, where his mind is. This team, it's all about this team. And they just keep finding a way. I mean, as we've mentioned here a couple times now, they just keep finding a way to win. It's not pretty. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't matter. Other kind of stat that I got from ESPN Sports and Information that's kind of interesting. First time the Colts have won 2 overtime games in a single season since 1995.
I was 1 year old. 1 year old, I guess, is really the proper. Wow. Basically almost a lifetime. Holy cow. How about that, George?
You remember that 95 season well running?
Very, very clearly. How about that? Not bad. Making history here this season. That is pretty cool. I was just gonna say something. Now I totally forgot. Wow, that is frustrating. That is absolutely frustrating. I think it's been long enough, George. We also got to give a big kudos here because without them, they don't win this game. Special teams and Brian Mason. Back-to-back punt blocks here that give the Colts a touchdown and then a short field for a field goal. 10 points right there in back-to-back possessions. And especially the second punt block with Tony Brown that's not technically going down as a punt block, but it's a punt block. I've never really seen that. Where like we saw with the Patriots on a field goal block where you come off the edge and you kind of time it up. But that's a great attention. And again, we've highlighted this a lot, George. It's not just Steichen, but the rest of the coaching staff. Attention to detail where they were able to time up the Tennessee punt. So they knew Tony Brown coming in, boom, right off the edge, get in there for what is going down technically as a forced fumble, but as for lack of a better term, a block punt. Tony Brown was tremendous on special teams all day. But those two punt blocks, George, we're not sitting here on a joyous Blue Horseshoe pod if it's not for the special teams.
No, and you talk about those 2 punts, which are the 2 big plays. They get the lead for the first time on the Grant Stewart touchdown, who hadn't scored since he was in college. He said against Central Florida his senior year, but he said his worst part of his game is scoop and score because he's got short arms and he has trouble doing it. And he wanted another chance. He said if you go back and you watch that previous score in college, it's terrible. He hates that tape. He wanted another shot at it. Got that shot today and scored. But going all the way back to the first kickoff after Tennessee scored, and Isaiah McKenzie gets loose and gets it out near midfield, and all of a sudden, all that momentum the Titans had from that opening drive is gone, and the Colts go back and tie the game. Now they made some issues after that and fell behind. That's another part of this too. You're down by 10 points, and I think we all wondered. I know I definitely wondered whether Gardner Minshew could lead the team back. We hadn't really seen that. They've been either kind of close the whole way or playing from the front, and in all these wins. Could he lead them from behind on the road against a division opponent, probably the biggest rival? We've been talking about that, all week. That this is probably, for the Colts, the biggest rival right now is the Titans. And yeah, the answer is yes, he can do it.
That's another great point, too, because, right, usually we've seen the Colts get out to an early lead and then blow it. Hence being the last 2 times they lost against the Browns and against the Saints. It was, 17-7, I think, in both cases before they ended up blowing the lead, and they got out to a early lead against the Buccaneers before holding on last week to win. But you're right, we've not really seen the Colts be in a position to come back. Like the Jacksonville game, that game was over. Like they were run out of the gym. There was no real threat of them coming back at any point. This was really the first time this year they were tested, and like I said, in that way. Remember the Rams game too, down 23-0 before they came back. But early on, you get punched in the mouth. How do they respond? Especially, like I said, with Gardner Minshew, you did have Richardson's only game he completed was against the Rams. So now the backup quarterback down 17-7 on the road against a team that is undefeated at home with that crowd going crazy, doing the stupid, oh, after every goddamn first down. To come back calmly, to come back and execute offensively for really, it was the first quarter outside of that one drive, the opening drive for a touchdown was not very great. The fourth quarter was pretty ugly. For really the quarter and a half, George, from about the 7-minute mark in the second quarter through the third quarter, offensively, the Colts moved the ball and looked good. And so to their credit, too, once they got down 17-7, they started executing. Now, again, you want to see them punch on the red zone there and score touchdowns, not field goals. But between the 20s, they were moving the ball efficiently, run, and especially in the pass game, too, and moving the chains. They did a great job where, again, they take the identity of their head coach. Didn't panic. Didn't get flustered here. Didn't all of a sudden say, oh, my God, we've never been in this spot. What the hell do we do here? Let's just get crazy and start chucking the ball deep and get desperate all of a sudden. They stayed and stuck to the script, didn't panic, and had full faith and trust that they're going to come back and find a way to win. I think that belief is why, again, we're sitting here talking about a win when most teams we have watched, George, over the last, let's say, decade, find ways to lose that game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there were a lot of reasons to lose this game. There were a lot of excuses out there that you could have talked about afterwards, as we mentioned earlier. Well, just couldn't get the job done in the red zone and had some fluky things happen with a 2-point conversion and the fumble that you fumbled back. And, those are usually what we're talking about after games of Tennessee. It feels like more often than not, from a Colts standpoint, after you leave Nashville, you're talking about if this, if that. She's on the other foot this time. And I think it feels good from that locker room. I can tell you right now that you asked right at the top, what are they doing? It is a very happy locker room. I think they understand right now. They put themselves in a good position. You're not just on a 4-game winning streak. We've been talking about this as a stretch of the schedule that you need to take advantage of. So far, they have. You're going to go to Cincinnati next week. Who knows? It's the last chance to have a weather game. They haven't had one all year. So if you can get through that one without it, you're going to play indoors the rest of the way. They're in good shape right now. I think they play backup quarterbacks or have a chance to play backup quarterbacks the next 4 weeks. If Kenny Pickett can't come back, I don't know how bad the injury is, but if he's not able to go for Pittsburgh, then you're talking about backup quarterbacks the next 4 weeks. They've put themselves in a really good spot. And if Gardner Minshew is going to play the way he did today consistently, take those deep shots and make Alec Pierce a major part of this offense is going to another level as well.
Have you seen Gardner Minshew's dance moves? They put
I
it
heard
on social media. Oh, it was a little. I think it needs a little work, George. Maybe now that they're starting to win more, maybe on like Tuesdays we can get Gardner practicing a little bit of the locker room celebration. Maybe work on that. But look, hopefully more wins, more practice, right? So that's hopefully we see improved dance moves as the year does go on. How about you, George? You got any moves here? Those hips still working? They don't lie?
Absolutely. Just ask my daughter. I absolutely do not have any moves. None. Zero. Tell you.
Well, maybe I guess we're gonna say Gardner. I guess can't ask you for any tips, but hey,
no.
keep on dancing. Keep on dancing. Let's go, George.
Like you said, he's dancing. They're winning, so I think that's something everyone should get behind.
Let me ask you this. For the first time this year, we saw the Colts push the ball down the field somewhat consistently. Again, mixed results, but the two biggest plays of the game, three biggest plays of the game, all came on deep shots, 2 to Alec Pierce, 1 to Kylan Granson. Is this effective? Or is this not effective? Is it sustainable, I should say? Can we see Gardner Minshew going forward in the last 5 games, have this be a real part of the offense, or do you feel like this was more a matchup and/or fluke sort of benefit here?
There's been opportunities in other games, so I do think it's something that can continue on. He's obviously looking for it more. Maybe he's feeling a little more comfortable back there now that he's started, a few games in a row here. But I think it's definitely something that can continue, really needs to. But I think even just putting that on tape today, Cincinnati has to play them differently next week now as a result of this, because you have those 2 deep balls to Pierce and you have the deep ball to Granson. It really makes you, from a Cincinnati standpoint, your whole week's going to be a little bit different than it was. You can't completely sell out against the run now, because you'll see it happened today and they put up 31 points.
I'm with you. I think
the red zone.
That's true. And we'll get to the red zone here in a second. But you're right. Like, I think it's one of those, and I think you saw it right away from Tennessee. First deep ball he throws to Alec Pierce, connects for a touchdown. I think a large part, too, why Michael Pittman Jr. was open and was getting a lot of single coverage underneath was because all of a sudden Teddy goes, oh, shoot. We got to make sure that we can't get beat deep over the top here. We have to start putting bodies up. And it wasn't like the Colts didn't go deep again until Alec Pierce touchdown again, or the Alec Pierce completion, I should say, in overtime. They took the deep shot and the trick play to Kylan Granson, which put him deep in Tennessee territory. Now, Minshew missed, but there were a few guys open deep. Pierce, again, was another guy they tried to target, and another deep shot. So they took, I got to look at, the advanced analytics for air yards, but it felt like there was 5 or 6 balls that traveled like 20 yards or more in the air today, which is, again, a rare sight. But one that continues, I think the biggest beneficiary of it, obviously, number one is Alec Pierce, because he's open and he makes big plays when you give him an opportunity to. But then number 2 is definitely Michael Pittman Jr., because now he faces more one-on-one coverage. The defense now is to put more resources deep, and that's a big reason why in those middle parts of the game, Pittman's making some big time catches because he's getting better separation. I think running better routes. Tough when he obviously catches the ball, but even too, the catch and run is there a little bit more than it was before. Where now he's getting those 7-yard underneath passes and taking another 4 yards for a first down. It really, if the big, still it's going to be on Minshew, right, to complete it and execute it. But if they can even hit 2 or 3 deep shots a game like they did today, George, this Colts offense is going to be taken to the next level. That's already a top 10 offense.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. If they can make the deep ball be respected, that's what they've been missing. And we've talked about it week after week. The defense is coming up, daring you to throw the ball deep. Cincinnati's going to think twice about it because of what happened out there today. They're going to have to, okay, if we do this, we better keep a guy back at least on Pierce's side. And I do think the other guy that eventually will benefit from this is Josh Downs, because you're going to be able to find him open underneath. After you do this enough, he's going to have those routes in the middle of the field underneath where he can, keep moving the ball as well, moving the chains. And you would think eventually it will impact the running game. And Tennessee, I think that was the most predictable part of today. We talked about it on the preview pod. You can go back at YouTube or wherever you get our pod. And they were going to sell out against the run. It was the worst game yardage-wise that they gave up all year. 193 rushing yards, 429 total yards. They were absolutely going to sell out against the run. Everybody knew it. Shane knew it. And I think that's why they put more deep shots into the game plan today. But again, I think the benefit of that down the road is what's really interesting here. The fact that Cincinnati now has to go into this game week thinking about Alec Pierce is a major part of this offense, it changes everything.
It absolutely does. And like I said, it's 42 pass attempts, 23 rush attempts. So basically double it up there. You knew coming off of this game, we had Ben Arthur on as well, who covers the AFC South, but really is based in Nashville. So he's seeing this Tennessee team a lot, covers them for Fox Sports. He basically admitted, this is the number one priority. They're going to do everything they can. And they did it, to their credit, did a great job. Did an absolute great job. And it also sold out in the red zone. And I think that's, George, a problem area. Like we talked about the deep ball carrying over. I hope in this scenario, the red zone troubles don't carry over. But I think one thing that was clear and obvious today, we talked about how great Tennessee was in the red zone, both offensively in terms of scoring touchdowns. They score 72% of the time touchdowns in the red zone. And that's only going to go up after they go 2 for 3 today. But also on the other side, they are one of the best red zone defenses. And the Colts will go 1 of 5 in the red zone. That last touchdown obviously coming in the last play of the game. But what to me was the biggest concern, George, was it seemed pretty obvious. Once they got inside the 20, but really inside the 10, Shane Steichen did not trust Gardner Minshew whatsoever. Now, he had a costly killer turnover in the red zone that bare minimum took 3 points off the board for the Colts. I think that's part of the reason why. But you saw the play calling was very predictable. And I think that's honestly why at the end of the game, it was shocking to see 2 pass plays in a row, was because once the Colts got to 1st and goal, it was Zach Moss run for maybe 2 yards. Zach Moss run for maybe a yard, sometimes 0 yards. Then it was 3rd down, Minshew scrambling, throws it away, back of the end zone. The one time was a strip sack. It was pretty ugly up until that last drive in the red zone, George. And it was pretty obvious, I think, a reason for their ineffectiveness up to the last drive was because Shane Steichen did not trust Gardner Minshew as far as he could throw him when it came to red zone execution.
But I think Gardner kind of, those big throws, and especially that last one to Pierce, he earned back the trust. And I think that's something that, credit to Gardner Minshew for coming out there and making the plays and changing his head coach's mind. And again, if he's going to play like this the rest of the year, you really like their chances. And we'll see how things go. The NFL is a crazy league. Every week's a coin flip. We know that. We've seen it just with this team week after week after week. But if Gardner Minshew is going to play the way he did today, I think you feel a lot better about this offense. And as a result, you feel a lot better about this football team.
And on the flip side, too, another negative to kind of hit on here was the run defense, which we kind of talked about. Look, Derek, we both agreed in this. Going into this game, if you're Gus Bradley, you got to prioritize shutting down Will Levis and really bet on the fact that Derrick Henry, who has not looked he's not looked like vintage Derrick Henry this year whatsoever. Lowest career yards per carry average going into this game at just 4.2. And leads game with a concussion, but before he do so, 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Colts did a better job in the second half, without a doubt, until he left the game. But that was one where in the first half it goes, holy shoot, George, like this guy could run for 250 yards again. And the Derrick Henry that's taken over so many times in this GD rivalry, I thought we are going to see another iteration of it. Credit to the Colts again. Second half, they did do a better job before he left the game injured. But let me tell you, you mentioned before, it is the timing of Grover Stewart returning could not be any better.
Yeah, and that would be a big boost. There's no question. Butner was very excited about that in the post-game locker room, getting his tag team partner back there in the middle. But, one thing I think they're still going to be concerned about, last week against Tampa Bay and again today against Tennessee, a lot of those runs are coming off the edge. And Grover's going to help, no doubt, when he comes in, the run defense as a whole, but you're still going to have some problems over there. Tyquan Lewis, I thought, did a really good job in the second half, shutting some of that down, getting out there and setting the edge. That's something that's still going to be an issue. I'm sure if I'm Cincinnati, I'm going to test that next week for certain with Joe Mixon.
That's a good point because you're right. The Buccaneers came in as the worst rushing offense in the NFL, over 100 yards for Rachaad White. And today, now it was 4.2 yards per carry, so that doesn't look like that. Like, oh, okay, that's not terrible. But 177 yards on the ground. Tennessee was going to pound the rock for a large part of this game. You're 100% right, though. It is going to be on the edges. And while Grover Stewart comeback is going to help, it's still on these defensive ends and then also the linebackers as well to seal the edge and make more tackles. Because, right, once you turn the corner, we've seen, whether it was Henry and Tajay Spears, too, had a few big runs where he turned the corner. It's like, holy, here we go again. Someone tackled this guy. But that's one where definitely going forward now, two teams that have either not been running it effectively this year or not running the ball well at all this year, have had success on the ground. And, you talk about, things Cincinnati defensively is going to have to change now with this game for Gardner Minshew putting the deep balls on tape. I think if you're Cincinnati offensively, you say, well, we're going to ride Joe Mixon. We're going to give him a lot of tosses, a lot of zone reads on the outside. And we're going to see, even with Grover Stewart come back on the inside, how good these edges are at keeping their edge and how good they are at tackling, because Joe Mixon's another guy where you let him break the first tackle, he's a home run threat every single time. And so that's going to be a big test now for this defense. But with that said, George, to wrap up here, because we still got a lot more to break down. We'll do it on Tuesday. Blue Horseshoe Podcast here on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Podcast, or wherever you do get your pods. I mean, it's still astounding to me. You look at this box score, it's still how the hell did the Colts win this game? Everything we talked about, I'm telling you, both the Colts and the Titans must have listened to our post-game pod, because everything we hit on as keys to how the Colts are going to win, the opposite happened. You got to slow Tennessee down. You got to force field goals when they get in the red zone offensively. Tennessee, 2 out of 3 in the red zone for them. Once you get into the red zone, if you're the Colts offensively, you got to yourself get touchdowns, not field goals. Colts 1 of 5, red zone turnover, 3 field goals. You got to really limit Will Levis, which, to their credit, they did 16 of 33, so he was sub 50% completion percentage, just 233 yards. Did feel like he was gaining some confidence and starting to turn a corner at times in that second half, but also felt like Mike Vrabel, just like Shane Steichen, also at times in this game, just lost complete confidence in his quarterback as well. Turnover battle was even, although, again, offensively, the Colts had one fumble, and then I was going to say the other one was just – but you got bad breaks. The breaks did not go your way where you get a fumble, then you fumble it right back. As well, you got a tipped 2-point conversion, go the other way for 2 points. Few breaks went the Colts' way. I would say more went the Titans' way in this game that maybe is just a preview for the Music City Bowl coming up in a month or so from now. But it's still a shock, George, when you look at just the box score and just stepping away from this game now, a few hours removed, it's still insane how they won this game.
There's no doubt about it. By the way, I think Music City Bowl will take 59 points in a game winner in overtime right now. They'll sign up for that right away. But there's no doubt it was not a game on paper that, like you said, if you just look at the box score and you don't see the final score, you're probably going to think the Colts lost this game. And then they found a way to win. And again, I think that's the most important thing. I really feel like, as DeForest Buckner said in the locker room after the game, this is one of those games that if you make the playoffs, and you're sitting there in the second week of January, going on the road somewhere for a wild card round, you're going to look back and circle this one and say this was a big part of the reason why. Because this is absolutely the kind of game that easily could have gone the other way. A lot of times it looked like it was going to go the other way, and they dug down. They found a way to win, keep that 4-game winning streak alive, sweep the Titans, and now it's on to Cincinnati, right? On to Cincinnati.
On to Cincinnati. On that note, George, I think forget about just looking at this game. Like if the Colts are playing in Wild Card Weekend, like, oh, this is one of the games that is the reason why they're here. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, you look at this game and you say, this is one of the reasons why the Colts can win a playoff game. Again, not because of the opponent, not because of how you played, but the fact that, again, so many things went against you. You went into this game without Jonathan Taylor. You couldn't run the ball to save your life. But they found a new way to win. And when things were looking like the game was lost, like I'm pillow over my face screaming because it felt at times that Tennessee was going to go down and kick a game-winning field goal. It felt at times Gardner Minshew was one tipped pass away from having the game end on his end of the field. Like there was so little faith or reason to believe in the fourth quarter they were going to win this game that they found a way to win and then came through and won it. It's that's how you win playoff games, right? Where the margins are so thin. And we saw it not just today, but again, we can count back and look at 5 of their 7 wins. They have found different ways to win. And even you go back to the last time they had the playoffs in 2020 against the Bills gave them multiple opportunities to take the game. They gave them plenty of chances to win that game. And I would argue still to this day, George, Colts should have won that game in Buffalo with how Josh Allen played in that second half and a few turnovers he had. With that said, though, now you are seeing this team when the moment is tough, when the game truly is a coin flip and it's up there for both teams to grab, more times than not, the Colts have grabbed the game and taken it. And that's how you win playoff games.
Absolutely. I've said it all year long. The greatest asset for this team isn't anything necessarily that they're doing on the field. It's not the offense or the defense or any particular unit. It's the buy-in that they've had with Shane Steichen, the effort that they give. They will not quit. That's one thing we've seen from them. It's cliche, but with this group, you saw it again today. They will not quit. They will come at you with a relentless effort from the opening kickoff till the final gun, whenever that is sounded. And teams that are able to match that are the ones that have won the game. In the playoffs, that's usually what it's all about. Who's going to keep fighting? Who's going to keep scratching? Who's going to make that play that has to be made in that moment that it needs to be made? And today, it didn't do it for what ended up being a little more than 60 minutes. It was about almost 70 minutes. They didn't do it for the entire run, but they did it when they had to. They did it in the really clutch situations. Get a block punt to get the lead, making stops on defense, even the last drive, keeping them out of the end zone so that the offense can get the ball back and have a chance to win the game. They made the plays they had to make when they had to make them. And I agree with you. When you get down to the playoffs, that's what it's all about. So, could this team get in? Could they win a game? We'll see. I know this much. Whatever ceiling you want to put on them throughout the year, whenever we want to draw a line and say, okay, well, they're only going to be possible. This is where it ends for them. They continue to burst through. So we'll see if they keep that mentality and they keep it rolling. But right now, where they are going into the second week of December, they got to feel really good about themselves.
I mean, just to keep the delirium going, like long way to go. But you look at the rest of the AFC picture. I mean, the Chiefs are one of the worst second half teams in the league. Can't score any points. The Ravens are great at blowing teams out. But when you get in a close game, it's like, oh, they don't look anywhere near as good, and they are vulnerable at times when that's a one-score game late in the fourth quarter. Jaguars, I mean, that's free pass. They got that, right? I mean, whatever. You can't win. Dolphins have been, they can blow out great teams, but also when you get close, there's also some questions about their ability to win close games. They're elite at blowing everyone else out, but kind of like the Ravens. Can you win a close game? Long way to go. But just like these wins are, it's like when you can win close, these are how you win games in the playoffs. Not that blueprint, because if they play the way they did today against any of these playoff teams, they're going to get run off the field. But it is one of those things where it's like you finding ways to win close games. It's not just about this year, right? It is. We talked about that a lot too. This is a lesson learned for a young Colts team that going forward now, hopefully, obviously, Richardson can't learn it completely because he's not on the field, but everyone else is. And the more you learn how to win close games, the more like winning, I think it's a cliche, but it's true. Winning is contagious. And when you find different ways to win, you develop belief and confidence. And kind of like what we started the pod with, George, you create your own luck. And I think that's where we saw it again today. Sure, they got a few lucky breaks to go their way, and you're going to say, thank you very much, Tennessee, we'll take it. But it's also like they put themselves in that position because of how they executed and how they made plays throughout the entire game. And that's just one where you feel really good about their playoff spot this year. But you also feel really good about the direction of this team under Shane Steichen now moving forward, that they know how to win tight games, and they have at least they may not have all the pieces, and they may not have, the requisite skill just yet, but they are they are building at least in the right way to where you feel like this team can win a Super Bowl with this formula that, at least on paper, that they know they have. They just got to get the right pieces to do so.
I think that's the most important reason for this team to make the playoffs now. Get these young guys that experience. Let them see this environment. Let them get out there in a game, play on the road, because it's different. Everybody who's a part of the NFL talks to you about every level changes. It's one thing in OTAs. Training camp is a different beast. The preseason's a different beast. The regular season's a different beast. And then the postseason goes up again. And I think it's good for them to get a look at guys like Jalen Jones, Julius Brents, if he's able to come back, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, these guys who've not been in a playoff game before, who can come out here in their first or second year in the league and be a part of a run like that, I think is really critical. I think that's the most important element here. Get them a look. Days like today help, because I think it felt like a playoff game today, and it should have. I mean, Tennessee was, as we talked about, sort of facing elimination. If they win today, they're 5-7. They're right there in the mix. They've got a shot. You can get hot. You can make a run. You lose, you're 4-8. You're in the same boat as the Jets right now. You just, on the outside looking in, you don't feel really strong, about being able to make this run and get back into it. So I think it had that environment. It had that kind of feel to it. And I think it's good. Every high leverage, high pressure snap these young kids take is a deposit in the bank for the future.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And also, too, just a rivalry game for Tennessee. We talked about we don't like them. They don't like us. If anything, even if they win, they're still alive, but it's like the odds of them making the playoffs are slim. But they said, they are petty. If we can't be in it, then screw you. You can't be in it as well. And they want to, and Mike Vrabel especially wants to ruin the Colts' day. And credit Shane Steichen to not let it happen. Sweep the Titans for the first time since 2018. 7-5, right in the heart of the playoff picture. Broncos lose, Steelers lose. Right now, George, making their own luck and doing what they got to do. And right now, by the way, too, in the most important stretch of the season, we always talk about it. After Thanksgiving, that's where the contenders separate themselves from the pretenders. 2-0. Ain't pretty? 2-0. That's what matters.
By the way, first time they swept the Titans since 2018. Gardner Minshew, 2-0, 1-0, however you want to. Officially, he's 1-0, but he's on the field for 2 wins against Titans. Clearly, he's the new Andrew Luck, right? Never lost to Tennessee.
Maybe he's a secret weapon now for the rest of the year, or for the rest of his career. Just the 2 games. Richardson will be the starter for 15 out of 17. And just put Gardner Minshew against the 2 games against Tennessee. And there you go. That's the secret formula. That's a secret formula. Let's go, George. It's been I am sweating. I feel like I played in the game. That was emotionally probably the most up and down, gut wrenching, because now when you're so close and you see other teams losing and you see oh man, this is a great, I am exhausted. My voice hurts. I am fully disgusting. Got to have to shower after it. I just was on the field, registering 14 tackles. We left it on the field, George. We left it here in the podcast, in the actual podcast. The Colts left out on the field, leaving Nashville 7-5. Great time to be alive. It is a great time to be alive. It may be a double victory cone here, or maybe a victory cone in one hand and a drink in the other, because that's really what you need.
Victory cone, and as my sister-in-law said, a victory cognac as well. You get it all together.
I like that. That is a good way to finish. If you have just joined us for the first time, welcome. Blue Horseshoe Podcast, George Bremer, Ryan Hickey. Check us out on YouTube right here where you are watching. Subscribe to us, and also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Blue Horseshoe Pod. We are here 3 times a week, today, Tuesday, Thursday. So tune in for Tuesday's pod. We'll still continue to break down a big win and get you set here for a big game against the Bengals on next Sunday. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you on Tuesday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.